Welcome to the Nerdthusiast Music Podcast. Today we will be discussing the album Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. With me is my co-host, John Brenner. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. How are you today?
I'm doing well also. Real quick, before we hop into things, if you guys like what you hear, please consider supporting us over on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdthusiast. Consider following us also, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can follow us on all those things at Nerdthusiast. Also, if you can't support us on Patreon, we totally understand, but it would help us out big time if you could give us a 5-star review over on podcast services, or if you could simply like the video on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. So let's get into it, John. Actually, no. We're going to wait a second. You did something important yesterday before we hop into the Beach Boys. You went to your first show in quite a long time, I believe. Why don't you tell me a bit about that?
All right, man. Yeah, last night went to my first punk rock show since March of 2020.
That's awesome.
It's been a long, long time, and honestly, it felt like I was 15 years old again. Went to see the Queers, great '90s pop punk band, very Beach Boys influenced, so it kind of fits. They played with a local band down here called Shakers, who were coincidentally the last band I saw before pandemic.
That's crazy.
So it was very fitting. It was very fitting. Pat, their singer, he's been holding a shirt for me for like months. So he comes right up to me. He's like, "Got your shirt? Here's a koozie." I'm like, "Yay!" Show was awesome. Met a lot of new people last night too, which was great. Kids were at the show, which gave me this whole newfound faith in humanity. Seeing 16-year-old kids moshing at a punk show felt very good to see that.
Yeah, a lot of the shows that I go to now, I'm 37 if you guys didn't know. So a lot of shows I go to now, I tend to be on I wouldn't say I'm on the older side, but I would say I'm kind of on the younger side of the general population. Because the general population is like my age or older. And every time I see a kid, it's like, oh my God, there's a young person. Look at that young person. They're here watching this band with me. That's crazy.
Oh, I'm the same way. But I remember when I was in my 20s, I would get annoyed at kids, like, too many kids here. And then then it's like, you were that kid. Stop being that way. Be happy. And now I just get super excited. I feel like there's a generation that is picking up where I left off. And last night was definitely that feeling. Just everybody was just so happy to be there. And if you've never listened to Shakers or the Queers, I highly recommend. Just really great music, just fun punk rock, makes you feel happy.
Yeah, you recently turned me on to the Queers. I listened to one of their records so far, and I liked it quite a bit. So I'm definitely going to be diving back into them for sure.
Yeah, I mean they're basically, their whole catalog is basically a love letter to the Ramones and the Beach Boys.
Speaking of the Beach Boys, let's hop into it, John. So tell me about Pet Sounds. Where do you want to start?
Well, to get an idea of Pet Sounds, you have to look at where Pet Sounds came from. The Beach Boys obviously hit in the early 60s, and it was a lot of you know all those songs, Surfing USA, Fun, Fun, Fun. They're the Beach Boys that most people were familiar with. It was songs about cars, surfing, and hamburger stands. That's what the Beach Boys were known for. And Brian started branching out. Brian really, around almost on a similar timeline as the Beatles, when the Beatles started kind of doing more experimental, more mature subject matter. The Beach Boys put out a song called "In My Room," which is just a beautiful song about Brian just kind of hanging out in his room. Very similar to "In My Garage" when you think about it, the Weezer song.
Man, that's a great Weezer song too.
Yeah,
I love that song.
And it reminds me of Beach Boys "In My Room." I have to think there was an influence. And when you listen to it, you could tell it was really about Brian coming to terms and almost being at peace with his depression battles. That's what the song is about. And that's where Brian really started branching out. They would put out an album called "Today." A lot of people think Pet Sounds was just kind of the first great Beach Boys record, and I have to critique that because it's not true. The Beach Boys Today Today, exclamation point is the name of the record, was a very mature record, and it really showed a lot of growth in Brian as a songwriter and as a composer and a producer. Most importantly, as a producer. He was really, really, really trying to channel his inner Phil Spector with that record, which he would take a step further with Pet Sounds when he even got their backing band to be the band on the record. But
just so you guys know, this is the third show we've done, and Phil Spector's come up on every show. I feel like this is going to be like one of those things in a podcast. It's like a recurring thing. Like there's going to be the Phil Spector moment in like just about every podcast.
It's hard to talk about music without talking about Phil Spector. He just has too much fingerprints on stuff. But that album has some singles that you would know. When I Grew Up to Be a Man was a big song on that record. Help Me Rhonda was on that record. But there were the B side of that record is just really deep and personal, and you just kind of feel that it's this band that is trying to do bigger things, especially Brian. Brian wanted to do bigger things. And that's when he decided that he was no longer going to tour with the band. He stopped touring with the band. They actually got Glenn Campbell, Rhinestone Cowboy, to be their new bass player and tour Europe. And while they were in Europe touring to promote the Today record, Brian is at home in his studio with the Wrecking Crew, which was Phil Spector's studio band, laying down the tracks for what would become Pet Sounds. So that's where Pet Sounds begins.
So this kind of like, would you consider this the beginning of the end of the Beach Boys being like together, like as one?
Not really, because they would. Brian really only makes this record with the Wrecking Crew, and then he did some sessions after Pet Sounds, which we'll talk about later. But the band did record; they would record records together again, and they, as much as it's a very much a solo composition on Brian's end as far as laying down the tracks, the Beach Boys, all of them, did all the vocals on it. It was a shared project as far as that goes. And outside of Brian being the creative genius, that's mostly what they're known for, is their voices.
Brian was clearly, like you just said, that he was the creative genius behind all this. Did that, like, is that part of the thing that splintered? Because I don't know a lot about the history of the Beach Boys. So is that part of what really started to splinter them? Is like people didn't like him, like, having so much direction of the band? Is that what happened? Like other band members had a problem with that, or was it something else?
No, actually, with them, they kind of all rode the coattails.
Oh.
Yeah, it was almost like, cool, Brian, you make all the music. You're the we don't want to have. I mean, and that's not entirely fair, because there are other. They've all written songs in the Beach Boys, and some of Carl Wilson wrote some great songs. Dennis wrote some great songs. Mike Love even wrote a couple, even though I consider Mike Love the heelish villain of the group. But he had some good songs. But
why do you consider him the evil villain?
He was definitely envious of Brian being the genius, and he also tried to hijack the genius as if somehow he was on equal footing. Prime example, we're going fast forward here. Mike Love owns the name The Beach Boys. He's the one who tours as The Beach Boys.
Yeah, I know there was a whole weird thing with like them touring, because there was multiple Beach Boys touring at the same time and shit. It was like, how the hell is that even possible? Like, I didn't get the whole thing.
He tours as the Beach Boys. Brian tours as Brian and Al Jardine of the Beach Boys.
Okay.
And they're far more Beach Boys than Mike, who owns the name The Beach Boys. When you go see the Beach Boys, you're going to see a really cheesy casino act play for like the casino crowd. They're not actually music fans. They're the people that want to hear fun, fun, fun and Surfing USA.
How did the band let one person have control over its name? Because I was in a band before, you were in bands before, and to me it would be like, if we actually got a record deal, all of us would own the rights to the name of the band, not one person. Like, how do you even finagle something like that?
Took advantage. Brian was in a very dark place in the 80s. They made a movie about it with John Cusack, Love and Mercy, very good movie. Brian was in a very, very, very dark, depressive spots, and Mike basically took advantage of that.
Interesting.
That's why I said the evil villain of the Beach Boys is Mike Love.
Starting to understand now.
That's where the background of Pet Sounds would be. Like I said, they put out the Today record. Brian stays at home to make these songs while the band is touring in Europe. And when they come back, he has an album ready to go. All they need to do is lay down the vocals.
Got it. So they come back, they lay down the vocals, and then what's going to happen after the vocals come out? Does the album like release shortly thereafter? Or?
Yeah, the album comes out, and quite frankly, it was not a success. Pet Sounds was probably their lowest charting record when it came out, which is really interesting to think about. It got a much bigger reception in England. England's where it really, really took off, which I always find funny. Like, English people seem to understand our music more than we do.
Yeah, I mean, I can see this not taking off in America. This didn't have all the hits. This wasn't like the most popular song. Granted, Wouldn't It Be Nice may be my favorite Beach Boys song. Like, that song is spectacular.
And it's the first song on the record, and it's basically a perfect pop song. But Wouldn't It Be Nice it's basically a perfect album opener. When you just hear that those beginning keys, it's, you know, it could not be a number two. It couldn't be track number 2. It couldn't be track number 6. It has to be track number 1.
I think it does have to be track number 1 because the album certainly turns, you know, that song is, like you said, it's super poppy, super like, you know, it's almost uplifting. And like, as you go through the album, there's obviously like darker tones. There's a lot to be said in this album, but Wouldn't It Be Nice is like the poppy, like this is the radio hit for sure. Like, this was like, here's our radio hit, and I hope you listen to the rest of the album.
And what I love about it is, as uplifting and happy as it sounds, it's not called Isn't It Nice? It's Wouldn't It Be Nice?
That's true.
There's hope there, but there's no certainty.
I think the hope is a pretty good theme of most of this album. Not every song, but there's a lot of good songs about hope. You could tell what I'm guessing Brian wrote most of this, and you can tell like what he was writing was mostly about, you know, the way he wanted things to go and the way like he wanted to evolve as a person, not just in relationships.
What's very interesting about it too is he actually had a collaborator was writing this record, a guy by the name of Tony Asher, who really, he was an advertising agent. He did commercials. That's what he did. So Brian had would write these ideas and kind of like rough drafts of the lyrics, and he had Tony kind of make them perfect. And I thought that was a very interesting approach too, to the lyrical nature of it. And you can kind of tell a lot of it sounds like it's jingles.
Yeah, certain ones do. There's obviously what's the instrumental one?
Well, there's a couple instrumentals.
Let's Go Away for a While. Is that the instrumental one?
Yes, there's Let's Go Away for a While and Pet Sounds are the 2 instrumentals.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, you can even hear it in there. They sound like a little jingle. There's obviously, you know, it's instrumental. There's no lyrics. And I feel like whoever, you know, when they were producing this, they did a very good job because they're just long enough. You know, some instrumental songs go on, I think, too long. Some are too short. But I feel like they have the right amount of time for those instrumental songs.
You Still Believe in Me is just a beautiful, beautiful song. And how many songs do you know of that have a bicycle bell as an instrument?
Not many. There might have been one on The Wizard of Oz. I remember there was a bicycle bell there. I think that led into a song, but I might just be mixing that up with like Pink Floyd because I did watch that quite a bit with Pink Floyd, so I don't remember anymore.
But that's a regular instrument. Yeah, I've never done that before. Doug Day. It's a regular instrument on this song. And this song, you want to talk about a song that's personal in nature. This is a song about somebody who constantly screws up, and there's somebody out there that still has faith in them, and it's that love letter to that person.
And this is like kind of, again, going back to like hope. Like, it's like, you know, he clearly is inspired by this person caring about him, even though like it seems like Brian did shitty things in his life, which I'm sure all of us have done at some point or another, and this is his like way of saying I'm sorry, essentially.
Yeah. And it's not even harping on the negative. It's almost looking forward. Yeah. It is. It's a hopeful. It's a very inspirational, hopeful sentiment to this song. And honestly, it might be my favorite record. It might be my favorite song on the record.
It's up there for me. I don't think that it's my favorite, but it's definitely top three for sure.
It's just when I hear that, just that opening with the theremin, and it's just oh, you know, and the keys and strings, and the bicycle bell. Brian was really doing some interesting stuff with this record.
Yeah, musically, there's a lot of different things going on. We talked, you and I talked before the podcast like weeks ago about like the different types of drums and stuff they use to make different sounds. They definitely went in a less like typical bands and more like, all right, well, let's bring this sound and let's try this. Definitely more experimental in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he was again going back to Phil Spector. He was taking that Phil Spector sound that he was using on those great pop records, but he was doing something different with it. He wasn't putting out the pop singles that Phil was putting out, "Your Be My Babies," and then he kissed me. He wasn't putting out those songs. He was putting out, like, again, the same sound, the same instruments, but doing something bigger and more personal.
The next song, I think that this is probably "Wouldn't Be Nice," I said earlier, was probably like my favorite, one of my favorite Beach Boys songs, if not my favorite. Aside from that, this next song is my favorite one on the record, and that's this. That's Not Me. So on this song, he's talking about himself. It's almost like a song where I feel like he was like looking in the mirror and like just reflecting on the bad choices he made in life, or stuff that he regretted doing, and he wished he would have changed. And you can see him growing as a person as he's written this record. So to me, this is like the most personal song on the record, and I really, really love this song.
How much can you identify with this song? And I think anybody who's listening can ask that same question when you listen to this song. It's the most relatable. It might be the most relatable song in the entire Beach Boys catalog, to be honest.
I mean, this is all about growing as a person. He's literally saying like, this was me, but that's not me. That's not who I want to be. So I'm gonna have to change. Like that's basically what he's saying throughout the main part of this song. And I love that because I think it's very difficult for people to change. I think people get used to things, they get into routines, and it's very hard to change. But he's basically telling his audience, I have to change. I can't keep being the same person I am because this isn't working. This isn't who I want to be. And the only person who can change that is me.
And what I find interesting about this song is that so many of the previous Beach Boys songs, pre-Pet Sounds, were so identifiable as a teenager. I don't even know if I say identifiable, but they're about teenage life. That's what they're about. When I listen to That's Not Me, that to me is a 24-year-old singing, a 24, 25-year-old person. Somebody who's not quite old yet. They're not up there in age, but they're not a kid anymore either. I feel like that song's very young adult.
Yeah, definitely. That age that you were talking about, this was probably me in like one of like my last years of college when I realized that all the fun is ending soon. Like I have to actually apply myself to the real world, and like I can't keep drinking every day and playing poker and doing what I've been doing for the first few years. Like I got a year or two left of college, and I need to actually apply myself. So I think that's very relatable, that time frame for me.
Yeah, this album actually really came into my life in a big way while I was in Ireland at 21 years old. That's when I really, really started listening to this record almost religiously. And that song, whenever I hear that song, I am immediately transported to Galway, Ireland. And that's where I think about like when I was just I was in a foreign country by myself and really kind of just reflecting on everything I had done up to that point.
Why were you in Ireland? If you don't mind me asking, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine too.
No, it's actually very Pet Sound-ish when you think about it. I always joke that I had a midlife crisis at 21. At 21 years old, I was like, all right, I'm 21 years old. What have I ever done? Like, what have I done? So I took off a semester at Stockton, hopped on an airplane, and landed in Dublin, Ireland. I took a train a couple days later to Galway, Ireland, and I said I'm going to be here for a few days. I wound up being there for 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was renting an apartment there, and I was traveling out of there. Yeah. That was me. Yeah. You know what? I was thinking, I was about to say, wait, you didn't know about this? And then I'm thinking, wait, that was about a year before I met you.
Yeah, I mean, you might have like brought it up in passing, but I don't think we ever had like a conversation. Like, I think you've mentioned for sure you've been to Ireland, but I don't think that I ever asked why. So that's very interesting to me. Like, see, I feel like I was always behind the curve when it came to maturing, I guess, as like, thinking ahead about things and like changing. I've always been a bit behind. So like that did like stuff like that wouldn't have even hit me until I was like probably like 22, like somewhere around there. Or maybe it was around the same time, man. Because like I said, I graduated college when I was 22, I think. So it probably was around 21 where I started saying to myself, I can't be the same person that I used to be. So yeah, but not to that extent. I certainly didn't say I'm going to leave school for a year and go to a foreign country that I've never been to and see what the hell happens.
It was a semester. I came back. I was back for the spring. I took off the fall semester, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. And a I listened to the Pet Sounds record probably daily while I was over there.
I mean, going to a different country really expands your mind. Like I know we're getting kind of off topic to the Beach Boys, but all I'll say is if you have an opportunity or if you have the means to travel, you absolutely should. Not just for like the cuisine or anything like that. You should go there just to see the culture and see how different people act, and you'll have a real different perspective on the way things are somewhere else.
It's a great experience, and everybody should do it. And I need to get back to Ireland.
The
I
other
need to
thing
get
I'll say
back.
is it also makes you, at least me, very proud that I live in America. And I traveled for 2 weeks in Europe, and I was so happy to be back in America after those 2 weeks of like using showers that didn't fit me as a human being, because I guess people are a little bit, shorter over there. Like nothing fit me well in Europe, and I was like so uncomfortable like the entire time.
I'm the exact opposite. I've been trying to get back since I got back.
I liked it, don't get me wrong, but I felt kind of out of place, and I think I understood, that this is somewhere different. I understand I like these things, but it's not me. I gotta go back to the
That's not
States.
me. That's
No,
not
man.
me.
I
That's
gotta go
not
back to
me.
the States at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like that song, that's not me, completely brings me back to that time of my life. Completely. Early to mid 20s to a T. We're out of teenage Beach Boys. We're in what is probably the more interesting time in most people's lives.
For sure. So tell me about Don't Talk, also known as Put Your Head on My Shoulder. This is the second part to that title. What are your thoughts on this song?
It's sad. It's a sad song. Sad Brian is showing his face. When I'm sad, that's almost how my internal monologue sounds. Is that song? The instrumentation, the instruments in this song are another beautiful arrangement that Brian put together. The strings are kind of perfect in it, and they're very, very somber.
I don't know how I feel about the song. I don't like, I always try to put myself in the writer's or in the singer's state of mind, essentially. And I don't know where he's coming from with this. I'm confused as to whether he's with a girl he loves. I'm confused as to, is this a family member?
Is it
What's
a
happening?
friend?
Right.
No,
Is it a friend? Has someone passed away? Like and I think that's my problem with this song is I the good thing is it can be interpreted however you want to interpret it. It's a song. Most songs are meant to be that way, but there is so little direction in this song that I have a trouble connecting with it, if that makes any sense.
I feel like we've been talking about the hope aspect of this album. This song doesn't have a lot of hope. It's more of begging for comfort.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I couldn't have said it any better. That's exactly what this is doing. And I think that maybe me personally, I don't like being in that position. And this is why I don't like the song. Like I don't want to feel vulnerable at any time. And he's, clearly vulnerable, or the person he's with is clearly vulnerable at this point in time. So maybe he's being there for somebody else, but he could also be the person that needs someone to be there for him.
That's what I've always interpreted as. It's begging for somebody to just be there for you.
Yeah.
What's comfort?
That's the way I initially interpreted it as well.
Yeah, so that I like I said, I find that to be a hopeless song, but it's beautiful, like the rest of the record. It's just there it is. It's a bummer. There's a lot of sadness going on with this song.
Yeah, it's definitely a very mature record with different themes. If you're paying attention, there's, it's not all love and poppy stuff, which is what That's the best part of like that's my favorite part about this record is like, oh, you hear the first song and it's like, it's a hopeful song. It's very upbringing. And then I feel like the rest of the rest of the record is just like, no, we're not going to do that the whole time. I'm sorry if you thought that's what was going to happen, but all this other stuff is going to happen now. Which is like life, things are going well and then all of a sudden some shit happens, you know?
Yeah, we all know that. Called Wednesday every week.
The next song on the track is "I'm Waiting for the Day." How do you feel about this one?
This is another hopeful, inspirational song, and it's about being sad. Actually, it's about something. It's about being brokenhearted, but it's also about like, hey, you're gonna come back to me. It's gonna happen. It's almost it could be a Descendants song, honestly.
I was just thinking that this reminded me of it. I was literally just about to say that like 2 seconds. Like this is like something the Descendants would write,
It really is. I love this song because again, it's about unlike the last song, which is just a flat out bummer. This is a song that's about a sad thing that happened to you. It's about being crushed, which it's all happened. But it's about keeping your head up.
It is, yes. But I also feel like the term "nice guys finish last." I feel like that's what this song is. Like he's there for somebody. He's always been there for somebody. He's always going to be there for this person. But this person is never going to see them the way that he wants them to see them. That's my interpretation of it anyway. So to me, it's actually a sad song where you found it uplifting. I can understand that train of thought for sure, where he's just like, oh, I'm going to be there. Things are going to work out. But maybe that's like some negativity in me. But that's the way I see it. Is like he's hoping for something that's not realistic, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. But it's about being. But at the same time, the person that the song is about is remaining optimistic, even if it's a false hope.
It's going back to hope again. Yeah. Okay.
And the drums in this song.
Oh yeah, fantastic, man.
The drums in this song are just amazing. If you listen to the song for no other reason, the drums in this song are just incredible. This is the song that really, if you want to just talk about the amazing production value of this record, this song is one that really, really, really sticks out.
It almost reminds me of this album in general, not just this song, but yes, this song, but not just the song. It reminds me of like, when you listen to something that's clearly highly produced, like something like that, this is not the same genre, but like something that Dr. Dre makes. He spends a ton of time producing the record. There's a lot of thought going into the sound, the beat, and all those things. Or like something that, Pink Floyd would have spent clearly tons of time in the studio. Pink Floyd didn't just walk into a studio and make, The Wall in a day. That took an unbelievable amount of time to do. And I imagine that this album also took an unbelievable amount of time to perfect the music that's going along with all of the lyrics.
I would recommend watching that movie I told you about, the movie where John Cusack plays Brian Wilson. The movie's broken up into two parts. There's young Brian, who's played by Paul Dano, great actor. He plays young Brian, and there's a heavily portion of the movie is about Brian making pet sounds in the studio. And the amount of time, basically he was married to the studio. He was married to the studio. They're day and night, barely any sleep, putting this record together. And it shows.
You have a whole different perspective when you actually create something and you work on it. This isn't necessarily the same extent, but like I edit our shows, I edit video, I edit, our podcast. And when I started editing, it was very, very basic. It's still kind of basic, to be truthful, but I spend probably like 8 hours in a show, and most people have no idea how much time I spend like cutting little parts out, making it sound as best I can make it sound or look the best way I can make it look. Like, yeah, I'm not throwing in like graphics. We're not having dragons on the screen. I'm not doing anything extravagant like that, but I'm trying to make like a tight knit show, and it takes time. It's not something, I could cut an episode and put it out. I can put this episode out in an hour and it won't even sound a fraction as good as it will if I spend 7 to 8 hours fully editing the audio for this show and making it like be as tight as possible. So I have a whole respect for the production side of music where if you want it to truly be something great, you're not making that album fast. It's going to take time.
Oh, for sure. And like I said, Brian, hours upon hours upon hours. Interviews with the musicians that played on this record, they just talk about how serious and intense and actually but also lovable Brian, like being professional and the most approachable producer they ever worked with, which I always found very kind of fun. Even though he was that intense, he was also about it sounding like love.
Yes, and this moves into the first instrumental song, since we're talking about that, actually. Let's Go Away for a While is the first instrumental track on the record. What did you think about this one?
I'm actually surprised, speaking of Dr. Dre, that this was never a Dre sample. It could totally work in a West Coast rap song. Just the chimes and the woodwinds in this song could definitely have been a 90s rap track. It's a chill song. It's a relaxing song. It kind of just
it is. And like I said that earlier, the length is appropriate. It's not super short. It's not super long. It's like the perfect amount of time, in my opinion.
It's a hangout song. It could be. You could just put it in the background and just kind of have your day going on in the background.
Definitely. I'm going to let you talk about this song more so than me, because your name on social media is typically followed around this. So tell me about Sloop John B, Mr. John B.
Okay, well, yes, this song means a lot to me. It is the reason for my nickname in the Long Beach Island area, which is Sloop, which was taken from because my name is John Brenner, John B. People in my work would call me Sloop. And I didn't get it at first. I thought I was really self-conscious about it. I'm like, why are you calling me Sloop? I was 14 and like really just didn't know why they were calling me Sloop. And they're like, dude, your name on the schedule says John B. It's like the Beach Boys song, Sloop John B. And so then I just embraced it, and it's become my nickname, Sloop. The song is actually a old folk song from the Bahamas called Sloop John B, which I think it was the Kingston Trio kind of originally brought it to America. And Brian, it was always one of Brian's favorite songs. So he wanted to do it Beach Boys style and do it on this record. And it's one of the great Beach Boys songs.
I mean, that's the way to do it. We're gonna talk a ton about people re-recording records. We mentioned that in our previous podcast before. You have to do it your way. Don't sound like the band that did it. Do it your own way.
And it's one of the few songs on this record that actually does sound like a classic, as you know it, straight up Beach Boys song. Those 3-part harmonies are just incredible. This is the karaoke jam for Pet Sound, for the Pet Sound record.
I don't understand what he's trying to say in this song. I don't think it's a bad song. It's very catchy. I think this is one of the more catchy songs on the album. But I think I'm just missing it. Like, is he really talking about a ship? Or is this a metaphor for something else? Because I tried to think of it as a metaphor, and it doesn't make any damn sense to me.
No, it's actually a very straightforward song. Like I said, it's an old folk song from the Bahamas, and it's just about a kid on a boat with his grandpa, and he wants to go home. That's really all it's about.
John, you're making me feel a lot better about myself, because I was massively confused for weeks listening to this song over and over again, being like, what does he mean? What does he mean? Does he mean something? And it doesn't mean anything. It just means what he's saying.
Yeah, and it's kind of an out of place song, because it's kind of in the middle of this record that is doing really mature and serious themes. And this is a song about being a small child. This is a song about being a small child in the Bahamas.
That makes a lot of sense.
Just throw it there, but it's nice. It's throw it there in the middle. You have the instrumental. I almost feel like Let's Go for a While / Sloop John B is almost like the intermission of Pet Sounds. The break where we've
depressed you enough. We're like, we've had enough sadness. Let's change it a little bit for now.
Yeah, we're gonna chill out, and then we're gonna make you happy. And then we're going to lead into one of the most beautiful songs ever made in the history of mankind, in God Only Knows.
Now, this was probably was this the biggest hit? Or this is probably the second biggest hit on the record, right?
Commercially, it's probably 3 behind Wouldn't It Be Nice and Salute John B. They would be the hits. God Only Knows, though, as far as a lasting legacy, I mean, God Only Knows, if you look at, the 20 greatest songs ever written, God Only Knows is always on the top 5 of those lists.
That's surprising to me because I don't think this is even in my top 3 on this album.
And it's famously Paul McCartney's favorite song.
Really?
Yes. God Only Knows was like this song was the song that, like, Paul will talk about that for hours.
How do you feel about it? Do you feel like I'm crazy that this isn't even in my top 3 on this album? Do you feel the same way? Like, what do you think?
Yes, because I think this song, I do think it's one of the great songs in music, period.
Oh, wow.
I mean, those lyrics, if you should ever leave me, the world would still go on, believe me, but the world could show nothing to me. So what good would living do me? Mind blown of how incredible that is.
I'm gonna give you that. I can't argue against that.
And Carl Wilson's vocals on this song. And originally, if you listen to the Pet Sounds, the special edition, they have a lot of the outtakes and the different versions they did. They did a version with Brian singing, and Brian was like, "No, this is Carl's song. This is Carl. This is my brother Carl's song. Carl is going to sing this song." And I think Carl Wilson's vocals on this song, probably some of my favorite vocals ever.
I don't want you guys to get me wrong. I think this is a great song. It's just not my favorite. Like, it's not even like my top 3 on this record. I think it is a great song without a doubt, especially, the verse that you mentioned a moment ago. I agree with you that out of any of the Beach Boys, I can't even comprehend who else would sing this song. Like, I don't even know how there was an option. I think Brian's great, but I mean, Carl was the correct person to sing the song, because I can't, in my head, it doesn't sound right from anybody else.
No, Brian plays it live. They played it when they did the 50th anniversary tour with, I think, Brian on vocals. And Brian's great. Brian sings it amazing, but there's just something about Carl singing this song that is just so perfect. Yeah, I do think you're crazy.
Fair enough.
I think, but you know what though? I think you're going to listen to this song going forward and go, "Huh, all right, yeah."
I can't tell you why I'm not crazy about, like, this is a problem with me. Is like, it's not a problem with me all the time, but there's a lot of times where I just can't explain, like, verbally why something doesn't connect with me the way that, even if my brain comprehends, like, oh, I should really like this thing, but I don't. Like, I don't know how to explain that to you in words. Like,
oh, no,
you know what I mean?
I get it. Because there's bands that just never clicked with me. Off topic, Hot Water Music, who everybody loves, like, everybody adores them.
And they got a few jams. I like a few of their songs.
They're good. They're fine. They're good. Just clearly I'm missing something. It's not on them. It's on me. Everybody whose taste I trust loves them.
I can align with you, though. I only like some of their music. I'm not crazy about it.
I'm just like, I'd rather go listen to a Veil. That's all. No, nothing against them. I'd just rather have a Veil. That's all. But yeah, God Only Knows. Sir Paul, I could talk about that song for hours and hours, but I don't think we need to. I think I gave you my thoughts on that song, and I hope the listeners feel the same way.
Well, let's start talking about the next one, because Mike Love is the beginning of this song. He's probably the bigger part of the song. I don't know. I know there's an answer.
This is a Mike song. Now here's a little funny piece of trivia for you. If you do listen to the outtakes and the extras, there's another version of this song called "Hang On to Your Ego."
Oh, really?
That was the original. Those were the original lyrics. "Hang on to your ego," because the song is about a little thing called LSD. And when you trip, from what I hear, I wouldn't know personally.
No.
You lose your ego. That's you. Your ego is gone, and you're just one with the world. There's no longer you on top of everything.
Man,
So hang on to your ego was a
that's
song
a better
about.
title. I like
Yeah,
this
it's a better
song
title.
more with that.
But Mike did not like the allusions to drug use.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's the worst. He's the worst. He's the worst. I know there's an answer that was still an amazing song, and it's another one of those inspirational songs about searching for something that you haven't found yet, but you're gonna keep looking. It's not a song. It's one of. I think uncertainty is a very constant theme in this record, and I think this song drives uncertainty perfect.
Well, I'm not going to go back to the last song, but I mean, God Only Knows is very much like that. You know, it's like who knows what life would be like without you. You know, this is very similar lines.
Yes, and I know there's an answer, and I know I have to find it. It's not I can't find it. It's I know I have to.
Which is going back to the whole hope aspect of the album.
Yeah, and it could be about tripping and looking for an answer.
I mean, those are all fine things.
But yeah, I do. I'm like most. I keep saying I love this song. Well, yeah, I can say that about every song on this record. For being honest,
I feel like after our conversation, this is the song I'm going to go back and listen to like more than anything else because now I have a different perspective on it than what I had before.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about music, you know.
And listen to the original lyrics. The original lyrics are great. Frank Black from the Pixies did an incredible cover of "Hang On to Your Ego." Really good. And one of my favorite covers of all time is Sonic Youth doing a cover of "I Know There's an Answer."
I never got into them. I've heard only a few of their songs. I know they were like, you know, big in the 90s, obviously, but I never connected with Sonic Youth.
Future episode. We got to do a Sonic Youth episode. Absolutely. Sonic Youth will change your world.
I'm not against listening to them. Let me be clear. Like I'll listen to just about it. I'll give anything a chance. You know, I listen to some weird ass shit.
Well, this goes back to my thing I was saying in the first episode about how whereas I used to like be music snob and go, you never listen to that. Now I'm like, Matt, I am so jealous of you. You get to experience Sonic Youth in a big way. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, I get that, man. Because like I obviously I play a lot of video games and stuff, and like people will tell me like, oh, I never played this game, and like my mind can't even wrap around you like not playing Mario 64. Like I wish I could play Mario 64 for the first time again. Like so, music is very very similar. Like I wish I was a teenager and I heard Metallica again for the first time in my life, being like, holy shit! Like just being completely blown away. You know?
Wait, you never played Ocarina of Time?
Oh, I played Ocarina of Time.
Man. I'm kidding.
Dude, then this is totally off subject, but the Nintendo 64, if you guys pay attention to any of the gaming stuff I do, I know it's not loved by a lot of people, and then there's a whole subsect of people who love the 64. It's my favorite console of all time, which is absurdity to some people, but I love the Nintendo 64. I love Ocarina of Time. I love GoldenEye. I love Super Mario 64. There's a ton of reasons. 64 is
I missed a lot of class trying to solve the water temple.
Yo, water temple's a straight up bitch. A straight up bitch. And I wouldn't. The first time I beat the water temple, I had to use a guide. I was like, I
used the guide.
I can't even understand what is happening right now. You know, every other section it was like fine, but you get to that water temple, dude, it's not even right.
Fuck the water temple.
That'll be the subject to the show that like nobody knows what we're talking about. It'll be like Pet Sounds. Fuck the water temple.
That'll be the name of the episode. Fuck the water temple. Hey, make our podcast bigger so we can have a fuck the water temple shirt.
Only you guys can do that. It'll be like
the Pet Sounds album cover with just fuck the water temple.
We'll put like a water fill in the background.
Amazing. It's perfect segue into Here Today.
So Here Today, this is another Mike Love song, which I'm,
Hey, Mike Love, for, I don't hate the art. I hate that. I might hate the artist. I don't hate the art. And I couldn't think of another person singing this song, honestly.
This is more of, I guess, a love song about being like here and now and right now. Sorry. Throwback to the last episode.
Right now, Mike Love is in court battle, suing somebody for needless royalties.
I mean, this is being in the moment, I guess, like the way love feels like at that point in time. How would you describe this? Am I off base or am I in the same realm?
No, that's it's pretty much it. It's a straightforward song. But this is one of the few songs, like a couple of them we mentioned, kind of like Sloop John B, where it's just kind of a simple, straightforward song.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about this song. It didn't really. I mean,
it didn't have a lot of complex themes. Like,
no,
the next one we talk about is the next song we're going to talk about is a very, very complex and personal song, which is I just wasn't made for these times. Which,
yeah, this was definitely a step up for sure.
Yeah, and this song is definitely Brian kind of feeling like he's more of I feel like he views himself as a composer like a Gershwin of that era, and now he's here in his 60s with your Bob Dylans and your Beatles, and he just kind of feels like he's just, what am I doing here?
Well, this record was him like stepping into that, saying, "This is what I'm going to do here." I think.
Yeah, and I love the lyric. They say I got brains, but they ain't doing me no good. That is such a profound statement.
It really is. I mean, how many times have you felt like almost disconnected? You're not stupid, but you also don't quite fit in, and you're not, you're trying to figure out why.
You know how many times people have told me I'm the smartest person they know? It's like been said to me a lot, and that's not.
I'm surprised you're not on Jeopardy.
Well, I've auditioned. I'm hoping to be there. That's my life dream. But I'm not trying. I don't think I'm the smartest person people know, but I've been told that by several people, and I'm like, I couldn't be that smart.
John, the thing I love about you is you know a lot about stuff. So, like, if you had a specific question, you know a lot about everything. But I mean, if I asked you a music question, which is why I wanted you to be on the show to begin with, which is why we brought you on, I know you had the answer almost all of the time, to a lot of subjects, not just music. But I appreciate that of you. And that I when I bring people into Nerdousiast, when we're doing these shows, I want to find people who know a lot about specific things, but also I want to know, what you know about other things too. You're a very diverse person. I can have you on the music podcast. You can be on the wrestling podcast. You know a lot about that. You know a lot about movies. You were one of the perfect people to get involved with this, and I'm so happy that you joined us for that reason. So I know this was a complete side note from the song, but I'm just saying I appreciate you coming on. I know you fit in, like a round peg to a round hole.
Well, I'm honored that you say that, and I'm very happy that you asked me to do this. This is my favorite thing to do during the week is record this podcast, and I just wasn't made for these times. I don't know how many times I've thought that. The fact that I love this record so much tells me I should have been a 16-year-old kid in 1966.
I think about that sometimes too.
Or I've said many a times, I wish I was 16 in 1987 and could have experienced the Manchester music explosion as well as that era of punk rock. But no, I was about 10 years too late. So I just wasn't made for these times.
I think about this song just slightly differently than you do. So this song to me is him being a little bit older. As a human being, you try to relate songs to yourself. That's naturally what you're going to do. I feel like this song to me is like where I'm at now. And it's like, I just wasn't made for these times because I can't comprehend what the F is happening around the world. I don't understand how politics are the way they are. And that's a whole nother conversation I'm not trying to get involved with. I don't understand why a lot of things that happen around the world. I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to say it because it's super political, but I can't understand the world today, and that's why I can connect with this song. However, going back to what you were saying about growing up, when I was younger, when I was earlier on in life, I did want to be like I said I should have. Why couldn't I have just grown up and like why didn't I have the opportunity to see Jimi Hendrix play live? Why wasn't I just a little bit younger where I could have seen Led Zeppelin play live? Like why did I miss these things? But being older, I appreciate other aspects. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm very into video games, and in my opinion, I could not have been born at a better time for that media. So when I think
No,
about
you watched the complete evolution with that. Like you saw every step of the way. I mean, I had an Odyssey.
the OG man, if it was Odyssey
Yeah,
One, that was the first home video game console ever created.
yeah. My parents had one. So
That's dope.
then I remember getting a 2600 for my 5th birthday. Yeah.
The
So
first really mainstream console in America.
and then a couple years later, I got my Nintendo. I watched it all. I'm actually shocked that I fell off on video games because I was very much a gamer until I got to college, really.
It ebbs and flows with different people, but you know, if I'm looking at my life, I truly can't be happier than when I was born. You know, because of video games. But yes, I missed Hendrix. I didn't get to see Led Zeppelin play live. They're probably never going to play together again. You know, the chances of a band like Pink Floyd playing together again are very slim. You know, I miss a lot. People have died over the years, but I can still hear their music. If I was born in the 1920s, you know, and I died in the 40s, I would have missed the majority of good music, in my opinion. You know, like the music I love today, I could have missed all of that if I lived for 20 years between 1920 and 1940.
Going back to this, when I wish I was born, I remember this is music related. The audiobook of Henry Rollins' Get in the Van, My Life with Black Flag, of just him, his evolution of being Black Flag fanboy and then being asked to join the band. It is just, and then hearing those stories, like I wanted to be there in the worst way. The stories of sleeping on studio space and eating dog food for dinner sounded like the most appealing thing in the world to me. I wanted to live that life, but I wasn't made for those times.
This song is definitely on the upper echelon of the record for me.
Yeah, I adore it. Even though it's a sad song in nature, it makes me happy because he's almost at peace with it.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Yeah, he's at peace with it's almost he's at peace with, you know, right, I wasn't made for these times. It's okay. And I feel like that's the theme of the song. I feel it every day of my life.
And then that moved into the second instrumental song. I think was this the final instrumental song of the album? I believe it was, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay,
it
which
is.
was
And
Pet Sounds.
yes, and it is interesting that it's the album title because it's not really a song that is in line with the rest of the record, but it is a really cool instrumental. And here's an interesting note for you. It was written to be a James Bond song, and you can totally hear that. Yes, Brian composed this to be a song for a James Bond movie.
Very
Connery Bond movie. And you can hear
another one I'm gonna have to go back to and listen to with a different perspective in my mind.
It got rejected, and he used it for the record.
I'll definitely have to check that out again and like think about James Bond when I'm listening to. I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have listened to a Beach Boys record like, oh, this should have been a James Bond theme, you know. But
now you'll hear it. You'll hear it. You'll picture Connery on the beach, you know, walking down the beach, and you hear it, and you'll hear
it. The problem I have with Connery walking on the beach, like thinking about James Bond, is I no longer think about that. I think about Austin Powers when he's walking on the beach and he's like undoing his fucking hair, the wetsuit and shit.
Isn't it? You know what's so funny is that so many of the Bond tropes are now Austin Powers tropes. like I think of Donald Pleasance petting the kitty. You only live twice, Mr. Bond. That's no longer Donald Pleasance anymore. It's now Dr. Evil.
Right, and Gold Member was Goldfinger,
Yeah.
and Odd Job became Random Task, and he threw his shoe. Oh my god.
Yeah, all these Bond tropes for a new generation are Austin Powers tropes. Kind of funny.
Look, this kind of goes back to what I was saying a little earlier, is that over the years I've appreciated when I grew up, like, Austin Powers is so good. Like, I can't explain to, like, anybody who's younger and listening to this has never seen, like, at least the first two Austin Powers movies.
The first two are really good. First two are really good. Third one, whatever. Take it or leave it. First two are very good. The first one is just a masterpiece. It's one of the great comedies ever made.
I want to go watch it right now. I've actually watched both 1 and 2 in the past like year or two with my wife, and dude, that shit holds up, man. It is still hilarious, even probably like 20 years later. That movie is still absolutely fantastic.
Comedy gold. That Austin Powers.
No doubt. Now, a more serious note to this record is the last song, Caroline, No, which you informed me is actually a different play on words.
Yeah, it's a play on words. It's about Brian, an old flame in his life named Carol, and it's a play on Carol, I know, Caroline, no. And this was originally recorded and released as a 7-inch as a Brian Wilson solo song.
And this is about, somebody you're with is changing and you don't like the person that we're becoming, essentially. That's what I took it away from the song. And that's also, that's relatable in my life, especially, years ago, not anytime recently, but seeing people change and, you're like, how was I with this person? Like, that's something really powerful. Out of all the relationship things that I think that are talked about on this album, this is something completely different.
And I feel like it's a perfect bookend of the record, because the record is, we talked about the hope and desires of this record, and it kind of ends on a sour note, but it's kind of fitting that it does, because the first song is Wouldn't It Be Nice, and it's this song about hope and desire and just it's positivity in its nature. And then Caroline, No, it's almost as if this album that's narrating this record, it's over, and it didn't pan out as expected. I mean, like the whole album itself, it's a very big step up in the Beach Boys catalog as far as mature and serious tones to songs. The great comedian and musician John Wurster had a topic on his Facebook one day, and it was bands who outgrew their names that should have changed their names.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And his example was the Beach Boys, because the Beach Boys by 1966 kind of outgrew the Beach Boys. They weren't Beach Boys anymore.
Yeah, it was definitely a more younger thing, like going to the beach, meeting girls, like surfing and stuff like that. Obviously, they became more mature.
Yeah, that's why it's so sad to see what Mike's doing with the legacy of the band. It's like remember those times, and it's like a real music fan. I don't want to. No, like that was a fun time of your life, but we want the substance.
I think that's the easy road to take, is like, remember this, that's probably why that's something that he's, focused on. Yeah. And like, as you get older, it's like, oh yeah, I remember those were the good old days, Everybody, as you get older, has the good old days.
Member berries.
Eat your member.
So I did like your take on this song. It really is. You watch people change right in front of you over time, but right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, and it's always, people should always grow. People should always change. They're not always going to change with you, though, and I think that's what happened. This person changed in different ways, and you're just like, I can't be a part of this anymore.
Yeah, and like I said, I do think it's a perfect fitting end to the record. Perfect opener, perfect closer, bookends to this record. So this was your first time really exploring this record, right?
I've listened to this record since between our last podcast and this one, probably like 50 times. Like I listened to it a lot just so I could speak to it more because I was not familiar with the record. I've only heard it maybe once or twice before. So it was nice actually listening to it and paying more attention, listening to it with headphones on. Right before the show, I was like looking over lyrics and stuff just to get a different aspect of, I mentioned to you music can distract your mind sometimes and you can just kind of sing along and not pay attention to it. That's why I think it was important to read the lyrics as well. And I think this was a great record. I can't imagine there being a better Beach Boys record than this. And I would say that there's few records that are as good as this that I've listened to in my lifetime. We talked a few episodes about like good and favorite. This is not my favorite record. This is not even close to my favorite record. I do think this is one of the best records that I've listened to in my life, but it is not one of my favorite records, if that makes any kind of sense.
Well, it does make sense. For me, it would be a favorite, and it's definitely a favorite of mine, but I do understand the distinction. But from an objective standpoint, it is definitely one of the great records ever made. I always go back and forth between this and the debut first Stone Roses record to what I think is the greatest record ever made. I think for me, it's a toss up between those two records. 1 and 2 go back and forth all the time. I always feel bad. This record always comes when Rolling Stone does their top 500 records of all time. It always comes up as number 2. When they did this list in, I think it was 2002, it came in number 2, and Beatles Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is number 1. Then I'm going through the list that they just put out last year, and Sgt. Pepper's is at like number 7. So I'm like, did Pet Sounds finally get number 1? No, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, which is definitely a top 10 for me, came in at number 1, and Pet Sounds, again, number 2. Always the bridesmaid.
I think that also things like this change over time. You're going to get younger reviewers, younger editors involved, and they're going to have different aspects of music that it's going to be not always, but a lot of times it can be harder for them to relate to something older.
Yeah, but I feel like this record in particular, though, just because of like how we talked about how it really does drive that early to mid 20s vibe. I think it'll always be in that conversation for that reason, because it's always going to be very relatable.
I agree with you with that. It should be. Anybody who's listening to this to like review it or critique it, as long as you're older than I would say 25, as long as you're probably 30 or older, you'll be like, oh, I remember those times. This makes sense to me. If you're younger, like if they hired somebody who's 18, like here, tell us what you think about. I don't even know that an 18-year-old would listen to this and understand what the hell's happening.
I remember how I really found this record. It was shortly before I went to Ireland. It would have been Memorial Day 2002. And I was watching a VH1 documentary on the Beach Boys, like a 2-hour full documentary on the Beach Boys with my parents. And my parents weren't big Beach Boys fans. They don't love, they had no real opinion, but we're watching this documentary together. And when they do the Pet Sounds period, I'm just watching these people talk about this record, and I'm like, how have I never listened to this record before? And I picked it up the next day, and that kind of began my love affair with this record. And eventually the Beach Boys. I eventually would become a huge Beach Boys completist. People are always surprised when they hear about my love of the Beach Boys, and they just assume my parents were these big Beach Boys fans. I'm like, I don't know if my parents really ever gave me an opinion on the Beach Boys. When they think of the Beach Boys, they think of me, because I'm the Beach Boys fan in the family. And Pet Sounds was actually the beginning of a great era of Beach Boys records. After this came out, Brian went right back in the studio and made Good Vibrations, which is one of the great singles ever made. You want to talk about interesting production. That was on another level that nobody was doing at that time. For that to come on like top 40 radio with just this psychedelic insanity and these just amazing harmonies with the psychedelic nature of it. And that's when Brian decided he was going to take the Good Vibrations concept and put it into an entire record, which was going to be Smile. Smile was going to change the world we live in. He got the same people that he got for Pet Sounds. He put them in the studio, and the the tumultuous disaster that was the Smile sessions ensued. Brian drove Brian to the brink of insanity, and Smile was never released. It never saw the light of day. It got locked up the sessions got locked up, would leak here and there. Bootlegs were made. Some songs found their way on other albums. I know you only recently heard about this whole Smile ordeal. Is that correct?
I listened to the album once, so I don't want to give my opinion on it because I mean that's really
Sure.
not. I have to listen to an album like 10 times before I can have a real opinion.
Sure. I'm not really asking your opinion of the record. I'm just saying
okay.
you just recently heard about this.
I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah, there's an amazing documentary Showtime put out called Brian Wilson, Beautiful Dreamer, which is just all about the story behind Smile never happening, and then Brian putting it out with his solo bands in 2003, and then eventually the Beach Boys version saw the light of day, I think in 2010, I think it was. So it's kind of crazy that this record was supposed to come out in 1967, and then Brian kind of scrapped it after Sgt. Pepper's hit the market because he felt like he lost the race. But it's kind of like the space race between him and the Beatles. Post the disaster that was Smile, which it wasn't a disaster. The record that came out was absolutely incredible, and it would have changed the world. And it's a shame that it didn't come out. But the sessions were a disaster. And after that whole
why were the sessions a disaster? I'm sorry, I'm just curious.
Brian basically lost his mind. He felt that the record was actually evil, and that if he did put it out, it would bring poison to the world. This is actually stuff that he said. He thought it was an evil record.
Like, so he literally lost his mind, or was this like a drug thing, or what?
No. He lost his mind. Brian had well documented mental issues. It's very sad, and we should all give Brian a big old hug because he needs all the hugs in the world. And he's a very lovable guy. He's a very lovable guy, but the depression battles were just something else. For instance, the fire track on that record, because there's different tracks for each element: earth, air, fire, and water. The fire track, he truly believes that, because on that day there was a big fire in Los Angeles, and he felt that he was responsible for that fire.
Look, I live in California. There could be a big fire in Los Angeles like every other day. Like, exactly. It's not shocking out here.
But I think it was close to the studio. That was the idea.
Hit close to home.
And he felt that he was responsible for it. But the band actually, they became more of a band again. The band started playing on the records more. They had a string of really, really good records from 67 to 70. In my opinion, highlighted with the Sunflower and Surf's Up records. I think the second side of Surf's Up, I will put up against any record ever made. It's just so amazing. Just so amazing. I think it might be the best side 2 ever made. And there's a really cool box set coming out. Actually, it might have come out Friday. I think it came out Friday. It's called Feel Flows, and it's 100 and something unreleased, never seen the light of day tracks from those sessions, from Sunflower and Surf's Up sessions. So I can't believe I haven't jumped in yet. That's probably what I'm going to do when we're done.
I'm assuming not all of those are unreleased songs. Some of those are probably like different versions of songs or something like that, or like modified songs.
A couple of the songs that they released early were songs I had never heard before. And that really excited me. Me and my brother have been going back and forth on that, like, just geeking out. Like, we're going to have a listen and then 2-hour conversation about it.
And this is throughout the decades, I'm guessing. It's not like it's just from specific.
No, it's from those. It's outtakes from those 2 records.
Oh, okay.
Sunflower and Surf's Up. Apparently, Brian was on a songwriting mission during that time and just pumping out songs left and right.
Look, I think that's when you get a lot of good music out. I think when you make a great record, you've had to cut a bunch of stuff that wasn't meeting the mark. You don't just make an amazing record. You have to cut the stuff that's just like, all right, this is great, this is great, this is great. Anybody who just makes a whole bunch of songs and is like, oh, these songs are all great, like maybe that happens once in a blue moon, but that is so rare that you're usually cutting out the stuff that's like, not to say that these songs are bad, but they weren't to the same theme or the same, level that record was being produced upon.
Well, yeah, it was like Springsteen when he did Darkness. They made that record that came out a couple of years ago called The Promise, and it was all songs that he had written and recorded during that time that never saw the light of day. And Little Steven made a joke. He goes, "Yeah, Bruce calls it The Promise. I call it, wow, that was a whole waste of my time during those years making all those songs that nobody ever got to hear."
I mean, at least they're available now.
Yeah.
I didn't go to complete waste.
No, or you could just be guided by voices and put out 5 albums a year.
That's madness. John, to wrap things up, what have you been listening to, man? What have you been? I mean, obviously you've been listening to Pet Sounds and stuff, but what else have you been listening to? What would you recommend our audience?
Outside of a ton of Beach Boys that I've been listening to for this record, the record that came out very recently is the new Descendants record called Knife and Walnut.
Yep.
And anytime a Descendants record comes out, I'm very excited about it. They're one of my favorite bands. I'm a completist. Between anything Descendants or All comes out, I'm on it right away. The interesting thing about this record is it's really a new record in name only. It is all material that was written before Milo joined the band in 1982 when they were a 3-piece.
I didn't know that, but when I was listening to it, I was like, man, this doesn't even sound even remotely new. This sounds like something older.
Here's the interesting part about it. It was recorded, the music was laid down by the original lineup, which was Frank Navetta, Bill Stevenson, who's the drummer, who's still the drummer. It's Bill's band, basically. Bill Stevenson and Tony Lombardo on bass. That was the original 3-piece. They recorded these for fun in 2001 when they were just all hanging out. So the original lineup that that hadn't played together in probably 20 years lays down these songs that they had made between 1980 and 1982.
Just the music, though. No
just
lyrics.
The music, and I think maybe some backing vocals. They recorded them and thought, maybe one day Milo will put vocal tracks that Milo come in and do the vocals. Milo does the vocals over quarantine in 2020. So these are these are sessions. These are sessions that were that from 2001 of songs from 20 years earlier, and the vocals are put down 20 years later.
That's so nuts. And
the end result is only the second record put out by the Milo Goes to College lineup of Descendants.
Man, that's so nuts. I mean, I listened to it once. I got to listen to it more because I can't judge it yet. But you bringing up Milo Goes to College, that is going to be the next record that we cover for the next episode. So if you guys want to keep up with us, make sure you listen to that record. I'm familiar with it already. Obviously, John is as well. We're both Descendants fan. I'm going to see the Descendants in just a few weeks out here in California. I'm excited to talk about this record. I'm going to listen to it a whole bunch to get more thoughts and opinions about it. Just for me, what I've been listening to, so you guys know, I listened to a lot over the past couple of days. A lot outside of the Beach Boys have been Red Hot Chili Peppers and Offspring. Those are things that I would recommend you guys check out. And don't forget to check out Milo Goes to College. Don't forget to listen to the new record as well, which covers a bunch of decades like John just mentioned. John, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I'm very excited that you want to cover Milo Goes to College. It's one of the records that is near and deep to my heart, and one of the most important records in my life as far as molding my musical taste.
I just want to let you guys know, if you enjoyed this, again, please go support us over on Patreon, patreon.com/nerdenthusiast. You can follow us. You can follow myself at From NJ to CA. You can follow the company, which is at Nerdenthusiast, over on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, all those things. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share, all of those wonderful, wonderful things. John, where can people find you?
On Instagram, I am SloopJohn232. On Twitter, I am SloopJ232. And
if you guys have any questions, you can write into it's nerdenthusiastmusic@gmail.com. We'll answer your questions in the next show, so please go ahead and do that. John, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure as always. Can't wait to do the next one.
Absolutely. We hope you guys enjoyed this. And until next time, you guys take care.